I would like to begin this tier list by proudly announcing that Reaper is finally not garbage doo-doo tier. Praise be, because he's finally got a foot in the door. But before I get ahead of myself, welcome to the DPS tier list for Season 8. Let's get started at not F tier, but F++ tier for only the most neglected heroes. Who else could it be but Pharah? Give it up for the hero who gets countered by half of the previous cast of heroes, including the two latest ones by a significant margin. Two long-range hit-can heroes that are sustainable on their own make life for Pharah real tough. Iliade is self-explanatory, but Mauga has a big hitbox that's easy to hit. But with his own damage, he can easily solo kill Pharah every time she swings too wide away from cover. Even Ramatra's new projectile size and damage is enough to pester her away, including the constant fear of Ravenous Vortex to pull her down. Even though it's taking a long time, I'm still optimistic for the upcoming jump jet changes to make her more explosive and active, making her more fun and effective to play and also less annoying to play against, but it's not happening anytime soon apparently. But then again, I'm not in a hurry to see Pharah mercy pockets in every other game again, so they can totally take their time with these changes. But for now, you'll have to play Echo instead if you want a viable flying hero. Okay, moving away from the hellish F++ zone. Junkrat's still in his own purgatory in D tier. It's really hard for Junkrat to become viable without getting any changes to himself. The character is just so dependent on map geometry to be good, even more so than Doomfist. Let's go over the checklist for what Junkrat needs to actually be useful. You need choke points that are so important that the enemy team will rotate through them consistently, short flank routes that can get you access to backline, and tight hallways to escape through, making you impossible to chase. That last one is pretty important. It's one of the big ways that Junkrat can step into overpowered territory for just a bit. It's possible to put yourself in a situation where you can't miss, but not that often. There's like one single map that covers the whole checklist, and it's Legion Control Center. Just 1 point of 3 for the whole map. King's Row is close. It has flank routes and tight hallways, but first and third point just don't have the strong enough choke points that funnel the enemy team into your damage all the time. Iconworld has those key choke points littered all over the map, but the flank routes are long, forcing you to sacrifice a lot of time for an easily scouted flank, or just stay in main. Junkrat's just really map dependent, and no changes have been made to make him better or even make his matchups worse. I don't know what's being planned for him, but he still works when you truly embody the rat playstyle, and just like Roadhog, the more shots you hit, the more likely you win. Next up is not Reaper. Amazing progress so far. Moving straight on to C tier, Widowmaker is the first hero in the category. She's the same as always, high potential with a lot of mechanics, but she is still in her worst form ever. Low health, damage fall off at the highest of ranges, and her longest grappling hook cooldown at 12 seconds. New players looking to get into Widow need to do so at their own risk. She's a cool sniper character, but she's got none of the easy value that comes with snipers in other games. Because of different hitboxes, instant acceleration, shield and matrix abilities, and crazy movement abilities, it's just way harder to hit precise headshots all the time. But hey, if you can hit those headshots, just like Junkrat and just like Roadhog, the more shots you hit, the more likely you'll win. Well, it's really Junk and Hog that are like Widow, since Widow is like the prima feast or famine hero. Hit your shot and win, or miss and lose. That job is even harder though with Winston, Doomfist, and Tracer being juiced up this season, and Sombra is still a lurking threat. Tough times, but it's to be expected. It's not even just that Widow needs to get constant kills to be effective, but you lose out on a lot of tank pressure depending on the matchup. Against Mauga, yeah, you can probably tap him in the head when he's being aggressive to really chunk him down. But Sigma is a totally different deal. Having one of your DPS unable to help with a tank fight hurts a lot. Even though some heroes are definitely worse, you can still get a lot of value if you learn how to play them to the fullest. So make sure to use the link in the description for a GameLeap membership if you want to grind even harder. There are tons of courses and guides all available across all roles, and even for improving your mindset for the game, which is definitely key in focusing on just winning, and also for taking advantage of the new patch. Next in C tier is Cassidy. He still belongs here despite being a pretty rounded pick, but for damage deals you just can't be average to get wins. His fall off range is really brutal, and though 25 meters may seem like a good distance, it really messes with his damage break points when fighting at long range. Just a little over the distance and you are dealing less than 200 damage with 3 effective shots. At 30 meters you need 5. That means you can't 2-tap headshot someone at that range. And because you have less escape tools than the other range DPS, it's a lot more dangerous to get into the range that you want to be in, even with the extra 25 health. The big hitbox has a lot to do with his dueling potential at range. You're more likely to get hit by all your opponent's shots with that big poncho on. I don't know exactly what he needs to keep up, but it's definitely not a damage reduction buff to his role. And now, finally, what we've all been waiting for, Reaper is the third best in C tier. Let's go. Well deserved. We're finally out the mud. Reaper stocks are skyrocketing. I'm joking a bit too much, but there are 2 big new reasons why Reaper is stronger: Mauga and Ramatra. Both the new Lifesteal Aura and Ram's new buffs make Reaper a great complementary pick. Pushed together with Cardiac Overdrive and pushed together with Nemesis form, there are finally viable playstyles again that actually benefit from Reaper. With Ram and Mauga, he's a lot bulkier and stacks his survivability with his tank. There's 2 big targets to focus on in the front line. And having 2 big heavy damage dealers running at you with damage reduction, lifesteal, and guns blazing will now actually be a problem. Reaper is still a weak guy overall, but having 2 top tanks to play around makes a big difference. You don't even need to give up on the super stealthy flank style. Just trust your Mauga or Ram to use their aggressive abilities every once in a while, and add onto it with your shotguns. But Reaper is also dependent on map choice like Junk is. No matter how good good your team is, running 40 meters to get to your target is going to make your fight much harder. But I'm still super happy to announce that Reaper is way more viable than before. Second best in C tier is the newly buffed Sombra. 3 seconds is a long time to be impede, but it also takes a long time to set it up effectively. Sombra is still slowly being eased into a complete rework, and this is a big step. Sombra's ability lockout duration being reduced on her hack and EMP was a big deal during the transition to Overwatch 2, so a partial revert is big for making her stronger. I'm really reluctant to place her anywhere higher than C tier though, since she can only really hit her stride with super coordinated gameplay and instant executions, and that's just not happening regularly in the slightest. Players will play what's safe, and there are a lot of safe options. Literally every following hero on the list has a strong neutral without risking the downsides of playing a hero that's invisible for half the game. It's just hard to play a good Sombra, and even harder to work with your team to fulfill that potential. But at least on a base level, Sombra could do more on her own than before. She's not fully dependent on her team to succeed, but she can sure take advantage of it better than anyone else. And now, thanks to an unexpected buff, Torbjorn crowned C tier. Even though he got a lot of nerfs after Season 6, his fire rate is still better than before, and his overload has been restored to its former glory, back to 100. He was already fine with 75, and he's now one tiny change away from being as strong as he was at the start of Season 6. He still doesn't fit in very well with the more group play that's come out of the Sigma meta though. He's definitely playable, but don't expect greatness. Even though dive heroes will be played a lot more because of their buffs, his turret isn't what it used to be, and is really vulnerable to a lot of heroes right now. Moving on to B tier, there's a lot of mainstays, starting with Hanzo at the bottom, just a regular Joe hero who does his job well. Dive heroes might make him harder to play, but it's just like always. Hanzo does have the advantage of being more versatile with his positioning and damage dealing. He can access almost everywhere on the map with ease and deal a lot of bursts both at close and long ranges. To sum it up with one pro and one con, he's a high impact flexible hero, but with a big vulnerability to getting rushed down. That about sums it up. Any further explanation just fits into those categories. His headshot damage and mobility make him flexible, but it's not enough to prevent him from getting rushed or dived. Next up is Soldier 76, and despite receiving a nerf, I am not moving him an inch from this very balanced and medium position in B tier. He is exactly the 8th best out of the 17 on this list, as close as you can get to smack in the middle without getting fractional with it. 3 seconds extra on an already long cooldown is barely anything. It's an increase by 20% compared to the previous cooldown of 15 seconds, so if you're wondering how much longer you'll have to chill before re-engaging, it's a minimal amount. Honestly, just emphasizing how short 3 seconds is for this kind of ability works better than phrasing the nerf as a 20% increase. It's a pretty meaningless change. Soldier is still reliable when it comes to flanking and outputting raw damage, but not insane enough to break through the overpowered tanks and supports right now. Genji is next, and he's in a similar situation. He doesn't quite have what it takes to dominate enough of the cast anymore. Genji's down to B tier because of other hero changes, both in buffs and nerfs. Because Ram, Mei, and even Sigma are better than before, even despite some nerfs to Mei and Sigma, Genji is a lot easier to pin down. Genji has the potential to be playable in any comp as long as he's in an okay state overall, but right now he's outclassed in all 3 comps by better options. He's been pretty fine up until now, but 100% picker Bastion being replaced by Mei instead has made those good times end pretty fast. Genji's deflect and mobility alone gives him good counterplayability even in bad situations, but the situation is just a bit too bad right now for him to remain a top pick. Genji is still difficult to play into his counters, that much has always been true, but right now he doesn't even have the advantage of being a one-size-fits-all slot into any composition. Too many heroes can bypass his deflect, and the game has gotten so fast that Genji can slip into the chaos undetected. Most players are still playing real slow though, making it much easier to make mistakes as Genji, and harder to make plays at all in the first place when everyone's being so cautious. But Genji mains, don't worry too much. This new season has a lot of new dive options and you'll fit right in with those compositions. Briggs' whipshot buff just got reverted, and Baptiste has received yet another nerf to try to bring him in line. There's still a lot to look forward to as a humble Genji player in the new season. Almost at the end of B tier is Echo. She has a way of being unaffected by most patch notes, unless they affect her personally of course. None of the tank buffs or support nerfs really affect her, but Mauga's release does make for another hit scan to take her down from the sky. He may have a big hitbox, but he's also an ultimate tank buster, so if Echo tries to copy him, the health advantage from Mauga himself is way too strong. On top of that, if you get caught by the cage fight of an enemy Mauga while in your duplicate, you'll still be trapped in the ultimate when your duplicate ends. Make sure to stay away from him as much as you can during that time, but otherwise, Echo can keep her distance easily and should still be fine. She still deals an insane amount of damage, and she's got a lot of mobility. She's definitely bested by the top of B tier though, Symmetra. Sim has somehow managed to stay really relevant despite losing her extra health. Her secondary fire has really made her way more able to switch between ranges seamlessly. She only reaches her fullest potential when playing with a fast brawl comp, but she's actually super decent overall. Just the damage she offers is amazing. She has poke and burst and turrets to pressure angles in a whole new way. Her teleporter is really good for breaking through difficult defenses or even just surviving an offensive dive. She is really good outside of her specialist comps, but without those 25 extra shields, she's a lot more vulnerable to dive. Dive tanks have especially gotten better, so it's safe to say that you might have to play a lot more carefully on certain maps. Finally, moving on to A tier. Right off the bat is Bastion, and he is still a top pick. Even though just like Sigma, he's falling out of fashion. It's still impossible to ignore just how much raw damage output this bot has. It's what keeps Bastion so good despite most players learning how to deal with him. Bastion counters have gotten better, but Bastion himself still has a lot of autonomy, and one of the strongest ability cycles ever in the game. 6 seconds of high tier damage output and damage reduction is still really hard to handle. This season is going to have a lot of different playstyles, so remember that Bastion is still a strong anti-dive tool when combined with the right supports. Next up is Mei, and although she's in the top 4 DPS right now, she could still be higher up if she didn't get her ammo nerfed. The ammo nerf is a pretty big deal, but it won't feel too bad unless the fight drags on for too long anyway. You can totally play long fights as Mei, but your cooldowns are just so long that you'll find yourself pretty vulnerable and passive for a lot of that time, and the reload has made that a bit worse. But if you're rushing aggressively, forcing an advantage with your ice wall, you won't even be reloading an extra time for most of your fights. You also don't need to wipe 5 enemies with one clip. Just getting a single pick or even forcing a Brutality Field or Protective Suzu with your ice wall engage is good value for you and your team, regardless of how much you have to reload. Even though Blizzard wants to get Sigma and Mei out of the meta fast, Mei will definitely stick around for a little while longer, since we're getting into a meta with a lot of strong tanks. This patch buffed 4 of them, only nerfed 1 Sigma, and rolled out Mauga with some insane tuning changes to make him into even more of a beast. Having Mei to split off their help is going to be pretty important to handle the onslaught of Titans coming our way. Slightly more flexible and the overrated, underrated hero of the year 5 times running, it's Ashe again. She never really fits into the meta like other DPS do, but she's at least a consistently good pick. She just covers a lot of bases, and stronger tanks is something she can easily handle. Ashe's coach gun is so powerful when used correctly, and a lot of trigger-happy dive players can get peeled easily if you time it right. I think I can leave it at that. Ashe has received enough buffs over the seasons to keep her viable without being too strong. Good stuff from Blizzard, even if it's unintentional. The big new change to this season is a new unexpected S tier member. Tracer has gone through the test of time and is now once again considerably strong in every situation. There have always been counters for Tracer, but we've already survived Release Brig and Bastion Torb meta. Tracer endures forever. 6 damage per bolt isn't new, but it is very, very strong. 1 clips and breakpoints are so important for Tracer. The 240 damage clip is very strong. It's lucky that Zenyatta's got 25 extra health to survive that scary number. Even outside of dive comps though, Tracer is just a really effective carry hero just by dealing damage to different heroes in the fight. She's got good enough burst to pressure tanks and the mobility to duel any hero on the map with just a little setup. I don't expect her to be too powerful, but if you've got enough long-time Tracer players in your elo, they might have just been activated. But she's still not the number 1 hero. Most people already expect Sojourn, so yeah, it's Sojourn, she's still OP, thanks for watching. Okay, I can't exactly end the video like that, so here's why she's still so strong. Dive is getting stronger, but she fits right into Dive. The last Overwatch League playoffs featured Sojourn Tracer as the best Dive DPS combo, beating out Sombra Tracer. That's how good she is. She also farms Mauga and Ramattra for rail charge, not to mention Roadhog, who's still riding a higher pick rate. And she's really self-sustainable, with her skinny hitbox and fast movement helping her fit into any support comp without needing a ton of pocket healing. She's definitely the queen for now, and I hate to say it, but I'm still kind of okay with it. As the season goes on, we're gonna see more Dive play, but I doubt it's going to be powerful enough to threaten Sojourn. That's it for the DPS tier list for Season 8. Actually, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.